Hey, you, anxious Christian dude. Yeah, you, the guy with the doubts. Stop listening to atheist YouTubers.
It's time to stop!
Turn off rationality rules, turn off holy Kool-Aid, turn off genetically modified skeptic, and turn off Matt Dillahunty. Listen, I know you want to mitigate against your biases by listening to the other side. I know that sounds like a wise thing to do, but you're actually being stupid. Hear me out. I've been doing apologetics ministry for a while now, and one common mistake I see from Christians struggling with their faith is that they try and prematurely flex their apologetic muscles by spending time listening to tons of atheist YouTubers, but they don't get the bulk of Christian evidences strong under their belt first. So when they come across a few things that stump them, they get troubled, anxious, or even set aside their faith altogether. This is falling prey to what the great English logician Richard Whately called the fallacy of objections. Whately defined the fallacy of objections as showing that there are objections against some plan, theory, or system, and thence inferring that it should be rejected, when that which ought to have been proved is that there are more or stronger objections against the receiving than the rejecting of it. Again, I understand that you want to mitigate your biases by listening to the other side. However, until you yourself can articulate a robust case for Christianity, I don't recommend that you do that at all. If the Bible is correct by describing faith as a precious thing, and you're just casually throwing your weak faith into the fires of criticism without understanding the shape of the argumentative landscape first, you're not being wise by trying to minimize your biases. You're being careless. And no, I'm not at all saying that you should Pascal's wager yourself into faith or lower the epistemic bar either. But I will say that you're not performing your duty of inquiry properly, and you're probably going to end up being another statistic or worse if you're not cautious. Regarding the fallacy of objections, Whately went on to write, "This is the main and almost universal fallacy of anti-Christians, and is that of which a young Christian should be first and principally warned. They find numerous objections against various parts of Scripture, to some of which no satisfactory answer can be given, and the incautious hearer is apt, while his attention is fixed on these, to forget that there are infinitely more and stronger objections against the supposition that the Christian religion is of human origin, and that where we cannot answer all objections, we are bound in reason and in candor to adopt the hypothesis which labors under the least." Whately is spot on. The reason why I can read Bart Ehrman books, listen to historical Jesus classes in secular universities, or watch YouTube counter-apologists and be completely untroubled is because I've got the bulk of the Christian evidences under my belt first. For example, over and over again, when I see people making objections to the Gospels, I see examples of overreading, making argument from silence, ignoring the possibility of independent access to real events, and so forth. I also understand if I don't know why Jesus said such and such, or why Leviticus has this weird command, or I don't know how to resolve this apparent discrepancy right at the moment, that my whole edifice is going to collapse. The evidence for Christianity is a whole lot tougher than that, as Whately indicates. The same thing is true about a well-established scientific theory. You don't just throw out a good theory based on some counter-evidence that we don't exactly know how to answer yet. So if you're easily troubled and shaken by listening to counter-apologists on YouTube, here's my advice. Stop listening to them, at least for a season.
Stop it. Get some help.
Learn the positive case for Christianity first. And here I'm not talking about a handful of philosophical arguments for the existence of God and some minimal facts argument for the resurrection. At this point, I'm sure skeptics will laugh and say that I'm just circling the wagons and telling you to indoctrinate yourself first. But that's not really true. What I'm saying is this. Don't act like if Christianity is true, it can take the heat. Christianity can take the heat. It's done so for the past 2,000 years. But a lazy and unprepared mind can't take the heat. Learn to steelman the argument for Christianity first. Investigate how Christians have responded to common objections over the past few centuries, and then learn how to be the best devil's advocate that you can be. So, what exactly is so wrong with that? The atheist can feel free to do the same with their worldview. George Horne, another 18th century apologist, has some sage advice. He writes, "These same difficulties have been again and again urged and discussed in public, again and again weighed and considered by learned and sensible men, of the laity as well as the clergy, who have by no means been induced by them to renounce their faith. Many and painful are the researches sometimes necessary to be made for settling points of that kind. Pertness and ignorance may ask a question in 3 lines, which it will cost learning and ingenuity 30 pages to answer. When this is done, the same question shall be triumphantly asked again the next year, as if nothing had ever been written upon the subject." As Horne implies, Christians have answered the same tired objections over and over, yet that won't stop ex-evangelicals with a TikTok or a YouTube account from saying it with a ton of confidence again as if no one has ever responded to it before. Finally, if you don't know what the evidence looks like, I'll be sure to pin a comment with tons of resources that you can check out. Also, be sure to watch the playlist on this channel. Avail yourself to the ministry talkaboutdoubts.com and get some one-on-one assistance. There you can find a community of experts and scholars far more seasoned than yourself. Learn first. And then, after you got the bulk of the evidences of Christianity under your belt, and you understand the argumentative landscape, at that point, dive into the objections that trouble you the most, one at a time, with a community to help you if needed, and don't overwhelm yourself. That's my whole point. Otherwise, consider that you're probably being like an overconfident fool who, after learning a few fighting moves, tries to jump in the ring with a more experienced fighter. You're going to look foolish and get hurt.